I tested every single compact camera to help you find the best ones. But thanks to smartphones, most companies don't make compact cameras anymore, only leaving a few good ones, and each camera is made for a specific type of shooter. So I'm going to show you the best compact cameras based on your shooting style, and I've personally tested and used every one. Now, the right camera really depends on what you're shooting, and most people simply want a hybrid camera that fits in their pocket for everyday shooting, maybe a little bit of content and vlogging, and it has to be cheaper and better than your smartphone. But I will have cameras later on that are more focused towards photography, outdoor adventure, street photography, and a very special viral camera as well. Now, if you want a good hybrid camera for everyday shooting and content, there's really only one compact camera that's right for the job, and that is the Sony ZV-1 Mark II, and I've linked the best prices down below. The ZV-1 is very compact and is small enough to fit in a purse or your jacket pocket, and it's actually smaller than your cell phone. It's a lightweight and plastic body that's very durable and only about 300 grams. It features a built-in 20 to 50 millimeter lens, which is perfect for wide landscape shots, vlogging, and close-ups, and the lens also does really well in low light when shooting on the wide end. However, if you're looking for a bigger zoom range, stay tuned because I have something for you. The ZV-1 also comes with a built-in 3-capsule microphone with decent in-camera audio, perfect for casual use, but I recommend a shotgun mic for someone that's a little bit more serious, and you can actually connect the mic through the flash mount, so no messy wires. One trade-off is that the ZV-1 II does lack a flash or a viewfinder because of that built-in mic. However, this camera performs really well in low light, and you probably don't need a flash for most things. However, if you want the look of a flash, you can get a $50 mini flash on Amazon. Instead of a viewfinder, the ZV-1 has a crisp, bright flip-out screen, which is perfect for self-recording, and it also features touch controls for settings, menus, autofocus, making it a very beginner-friendly camera for someone that's coming from a cell phone. Battery life is also super solid and will last all day for casual shooting. As for the specs, it has a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor, which is about as good as point-and-shoot cameras get. But it also has a dedicated DRAM chip to deliver super fast autofocus that is as good as a proper mirrorless camera. This way, you'll never miss a shot even with fast moving objects because the autofocus is so fast, and it can also capture photos up to 24 frames a second, which is basically as fast as video. So you can simply burst shoot and pick the exact moment you want for the photo. This makes it a great camera for any type of shooter, from family and kids, travel, street photography, any kind of photography will work. For video, it can record 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, which is pretty ideal for vlogging and lifestyle content. And it also has stabilization that helps give your vlogs a smoother look. And the stabilization is just about as good as compact cameras get. Some people don't like it and don't think it's enough stabilization, but I personally don't have any issues. This is just how compact cameras are. And there's also a cinematic vlog mode that adds black bars to the top and bottom of your video and gives you a customizable cinematic look right in camera, giving you awesome video with zero work. And the ZV-1 Mark II also has S-Log2, S-Log3, and S-Cinetone for advanced color grading. And you also get full HD slow motion at 60 and 120 frames per second, and you get a super slow motion mode where you can shoot up to 240 and 960 frames per second. The quality does drop off when you get into the super slow motion mode, but this is a really cool feature to have in such a small camera, and way more than any cell phone or action camera is capable of. For hobbyists or content creator, the ZV-1 literally does it all. I wish it had a flash and a viewfinder, but I do like the built-in mic, and I think for the people this camera's for, this is a much better setup. However, if you're looking for a camera with a flash and a viewfinder and a bigger zoom because you're more focused on photo performance, stay tuned because I've got the perfect camera for you. And that is the Sony RX 100 Mark VII. This is without a doubt the ultimate compact powerhouse. It's made of a really hard metal, giving the body a really premium feel in your hands, and it also has a high quality electronic viewfinder, a built-in flash, and a flip-up screen for selfies. The screen, however, only has touch autofocus and no other touch controls, but that's totally fine because the buttons and dials on this camera are fantastic. The feel of this camera in your hands makes you want to take photos. And the lens on the RX 100 is significantly better. It has a 24 to 200 millimeter zoom range that gives you a huge variety of options for wide angle shots, for portraits, for telephoto, sports stuff. You can shoot pretty much anything you want with this lens. And it also has a variable aperture between f2.8 to f4.5, making it decent for low light on the wide end, and the autofocusing system in the RX 100 might be a little bit older, but it's only missing the latest AI features, and for the most part, as a compact camera, the autofocus is still 10 out of 10. Under the hood, you have a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor, which is the same as the Sony ZV-1, but it shoots slightly slower at 20 frames per second with no blackout, still making it a great action camera. And it supports the same video formats of 4K video and super slow motion with S-Log 3, and I'll leave all of that up here on the screen in case you forget. But for video, it's basically the same camera as the ZV-1. The RX 100 gives you the best of what compact cameras have to offer, but in a premium metal body with ergonomics that serious shooters will appreciate. Now, one special shout out that I have to give to a camera that's specifically made for adventurers and outdoorsy people, and that is the Olympus Tough TG7. It's a compact, waterproof, drop-proof camera designed specifically for adventurers. It's waterproof up to 15 meters and shock and drop-proof up to 2.1 meters, which is about the size of LeBron James or Michael Jordan, depending on how old you are. But it's also crush-proof and freeze-proof, making it the perfect camera for extreme conditions. And it also has a built-in GPS to log where you took your photos. And it also has a built-in flashlight. The battery life is about the same as any point-and-shoot camera, but it will not freeze in the cold. In terms of specs, it features a 12 megapixel 1-inch sensor with a built-in 25 to 100 millimeter lens. And this lens has an aperture between f2.0 and f.9. With the sensor and lens combination, this is one of the best low-light point-and-shoot cameras out there. And it can also shoot photos at 10 frames per second, which is pretty decent for this type of camera. And it can do 4K video up to 24 and 30 frames per second with full HD up to 120 frames per second for 5x slow motion. And there's even a special underwater mode for this camera. However, one thing that you have to know is that the images from this camera aren't anything particularly beautiful or artistic. If you're looking for an artistic camera, the ZV-1 will give you better results. The Olympus TG7 isn't a creative camera, it's more of a utility camera for rugged and extreme conditions. And if you're someone that's outdoors a lot and you need a camera that can hold up to those conditions, this is one of the best cameras you can pick up. Now, if you want the best possible photo quality in a point-and-shoot camera, we have to talk about the Ricoh GR3. This camera is super popular and has a huge following among serious photographers. It actually has a magnesium alloy body, super tough but very light. And it has an impressively fast startup time of 1.2 seconds. So you can just whip this camera out and take quick photos no matter where you are. The Ricoh GR3 doesn't have a built-in flash, but I use a mini flash on mine and it works great. It also doesn't have a viewfinder, but since this is a camera that's supposed to be a quick on-the-go shooting camera, you don't really need a viewfinder. But one really cool thing is that the Ricoh GR3 does have 3-axis stabilization, which is something you never see on a point-and-shoot camera, and it's only something you see in bigger mirrorless cameras. So you're going to get super stable photos, but you can also shoot at a slower shutter without worrying about motion blur. Now, depending on what GR3 model you get, you can actually get the GR3 or the GR3X. The GR3 has a fixed 28mm lens for wide and landscape shots, but the GR3X has a 40mm lens, which is great for landscapes, but much better for portraits and detail shots. And both lenses have a minimum aperture of f2.8, making them great low-light cameras. Now, most GR3s come with a built-in ND filter, but if you get the HDF version, you can actually get a highlight diffusion filter that gives you a really soft cinematic vintage glow around all of your images, and that's the one that I actually have. The battery is rated for about 300 shots, but in my experience, it drains way faster. You get maybe 150 to 180. But you can charge it via USB-C, which helps. Now, what gives the GR3 the best image quality from any point-and-shoot camera is actually the fact that it has a 24.2 megapixel APS-C size sensor with no low-pass filter. Now, the APS-C sensor is actually about 2 times larger than most point-and-shoot sensors, giving you more light and sharper images. And the GR3 has this beautiful film-like grain in all of its images. And because of that, it handles low light really well, even up to 20,000 ISO, because the noise looks more like film grain than anything bad. However, there is a downside. Because it has a larger, higher quality sensor, it only shoots at 4 frames per second, which is pretty slow. So capturing action with this camera is kind of hit and miss because you have less frames to work with. And the autofocus is a hybrid system with phase and contrast detection. It's super solid in bright outdoor conditions, but it does struggle in low light, and it's also not the fastest autofocusing system out there. The Ricoh GR3 really shines with its image quality, and the autofocusing system is totally fine when you're doing more slower and deliberate shooting. As for video, it's abysmal. We'll leave it at that. Ultimately, the Ricoh GR3 is really made for photographers who want mirrorless level quality in a tiny pocket-sized camera. It's perfect for someone that wants to get high quality photos on the go, but it's really just made for those people. Now, the best point and shoot camera is one that's recently gone viral, and for once, it's for the right reasons, and that is the Canon G7X Mark II, which I also own. So why has this camera gone viral? Well, first of all, people love how small and compact this camera is. It's perfect for a purse, for a jacket pocket. You can literally take it anywhere with you, but on top of that, it's also made of a really hard metallic-like plastic that makes this camera feel really durable and really great in your hands. But most importantly, it also has a built-in flash, which is really rare to find on compact cameras. Sadly, there is no viewfinder. The images from this camera are gorgeous, but it doesn't really have a special sensor inside. It's a typical 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor, which is very similar to what you find in the ZV-1 and the RX 100. In terms of resolution and size, this camera is not doing anything special with its sensor. And the lens inside of this camera is a 24 to 70 millimeter f1.8 to f2.8 lens, which is going to give you great results in low light no matter what focal length you're shooting. And the lens is also very soft with a vintage feel to it, and the softness also helps to hide any imperfections in your photo and on skin. With the combination of color and the softness of this lens, I can see why Instagram girlies and photo hipsters really love this camera. But it's not perfect, it does have some downsides. The autofocus is super solid for casual shooting, but the Sony's autofocus is way faster and more accurate, but for casual shooting, I think you'll be just fine. However, this camera isn't very fast. It only shoots at 8 frames per second, and it only does full HD up to 120 frames per second. There is no 4K option. You could get the G7X Mark III, which does have 4K, better autofocus, and faster burst shooting. However, it lacks that unique character found in the G7X Mark II. And instead of upgrading to the G7X Mark III, you might as well get the ZV-1 or the Sony RX 100, which is going to give you more specs for your money, but you can get those cameras to look like the G7X with a little bit of work. The biggest catch with the G7X Mark II is that Canon no longer makes this camera, and most places are reselling this camera brand new for $1,400. Do not buy this camera for $1,400, it's a complete ripoff. Instead, buy this camera used for anywhere between $500 to $600 in North America, and if you live in Europe or East Asia, this camera is dirt cheap for maybe 150 bucks. So I'll leave links down below for the best pricing in different countries for this camera so you guys can check it out, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.